What does Hadi Kalakeche of Locked On NHL Prospects think of the Sharks draft here on today's episode of Locked On Sharks?
You're Locked On Sharks, your daily podcast on the San Jose Sharks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to Locked On Sharks, the premier hockey podcast covering your favorite team in the Bay Area. My name is JD Young, contributor at Inside the Rink and San Jose Hockey Now, and I want to thank you for making Locked On Sharks your first listen, proudly a part of the Locked On Network. We cover your team every day, or at least 3 days a week right now, as we are full on to the off season. Joined by good friend Hadi Kalakeche from the Locked On NHL Prospects. We're going to talk about what he thought of the Sharks draft, especially kind of the bulk of those top four picks. But he's going to give his thoughts. So Hadi, it's Saturday afternoon, and there's no better way to talk than draft picks, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, this is the time. I just finished up watching a couple 2024 prospects, so I'm starting early on that. But yeah, let's circle right back to San Jose's draft, which was honestly really not bad. I loved the picks that they made, especially in the ranks that they were available. A couple picks I was extremely surprised to see available that low.
Yeah, so, I mean, we have to start, of course, at the top, right? Getting Will Smith and Quentin Musty. We'll start with Will Smith, the fourth overall pick, and I think there will be a percentage of Sharks fans and a percentage of Canadians fans, a percentage of Coyotes fans will all kind of side eye and keep an eye on Michkov as he progresses. But I mean, Will Smith, it's not like Mike Grier picked some third line grinder. Will Smith's a great player, and I listened to your guys' Pacific breakdown. I know there is some issues with Smith that he's gonna have to work on, but the Sharks are still getting a dynamic player, number 4, right?
Absolutely. I mean, for me, this is he's already the best prospect in the pool for me by a decent margin. He's just so supremely skilled. Now, obviously, the pace of play needs to come a bit of a while. He needs to improve his foot speed and learn to reach that top speed of a Zegras or a Cooley, which, he tries to play that style, but without the speed is kind of difficult, right? Mm-hmm. So just upping that pace of play, upping that foot speed will really help him, and also just learning when to just drive the net rather than he's really good at delaying. He's really good at finding open pockets of space and working with space, but I want to see him, battle for possession at full speed, heading to the net, that kind of thing. Some of the things that make Ryan Leonard so effective were things that I saw lacking from Will Smith's game. I feel like if you take Will Smith and Ryan Leonard and put them together, you get like a perfect hockey player. Their skill sets are similar in some areas, but what Leonard lacks, Will Smith has in spades, and what Will Smith lacks, Leonard has in spades. So it's the type of thing where I would like to see him emulate Leonard a bit more in the type of game, the intensity, the approach, the just go to the net, see what happens kind of mindset is what I like to see. So that's kind of my read on Will Smith. But at fourth overall, I mean, I was astounded. I thought he'd be gone at third. But when Adam Fantilli dropped to 3, I was like, yeah, no, okay, Will Smith's going to be available for the Sharks, and I'm not surprised at all that they picked him up. He's right in their wheelhouse, and he wasn't going to slip further than that. I mean, Kent Hughes knows Will Smith very well, so if he wasn't gone at 4, he was gone at 5 for sure.
Yeah, and we know Mike Grier knows Will Smith very well from their Mike Grier's son played with Will Smith, the Boston connection, all that fun stuff, of course. So, and going to, speaking of Boston connection, he's going to Boston College. I think it's going to be up to Will Smith if he plays 1 year or 2 years at Boston College, depending on how well he continues to develop. He said one of the things that he wants to work on is being a, kind of every situation type of player, playing those penalty, minutes, playing in his own defensive zone, because he never had to do that for the U.S. national team because they just were like, defense is for nerds. Let's just go score a bunch of points. And they scored a bunch of points. So, but you mentioned the foot speed. Is that something where it's just as he continues to get stronger and add more muscle to his frame, you should see that continue to get better and better?
I wouldn't be surprised, but at the same time, I'd be astounded if it it hits the level of a Trevor Zegras or Logan
Yeah.
Cooley. Maybe it was just watching him all year and contrasting him with Oliver Moore, who is just by far the best skater in the draft.
He is very good at skating.
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned the whole defenses for nerds thing. I mean, it is when you have Oliver Moore on your second line. Like he's going to do the work of three lines in terms of defensive acumen and involvement, which kind of freed up Will Smith to just explore offensively a lot. But the thing is, I like to see players at least be willing to engage in those scenarios. Yeah. That's one thing that I want to see from Will Smith is it's one thing to not need to do it, but it's another thing to not have to face that scenario at all and then not explore that area of your game at all, which then leads you to not really develop that area of your game. You can develop it off the ice as much as you want. You can develop it in training drills and all that as much as you want. But if it's not game scenarios, it's very difficult to replicate and make a regular element of your game. So that's one thing that I really want to see from Will Smith.
Yeah, and playing at Boston College, I think he's gonna have every opportunity to work on that, making that jump from kind of the U.S. national team, USHL program to playing NCAA hockey. We're gonna kind of, we talked with friend Billy Sullivan last week, who talked about that. He called it that gauntlet, for these young guys, where it's just like survive and try to kind of figure things out. So yeah, I think he's going to be in good hands. I think Sharks fans are going to be very, very excited here. I know Sharks fans are over the moon about Quentin Musty, who fell to them at 26 and was the talk of the prospect scrimmage, where he turned 18 on his birthday, 18th birthday, scored 2 goals, had another goal in the shootout, and Sharks fans are already like hyping up the Musty train. So it's crazy he fell to them at 26, right?
Yeah, no, it absolutely is. I mean, we at Dobber Prospects had him at 11th on our final rankings. He was about at the 12-13 range for me at the very end of the same tier as Will Smith. So it's very interesting to me that he fell to 26. He's very raw. Don't get me wrong. He's not a complete prospect by any means. His defensive game needs to come leaps and bounds. But one thing that I really saw improve throughout the years, at the start of the year, Quentin Musty was making me pull my hair out with his decision making and his hockey sense. It was awful at times. He would just throw pucks haphazardly at players without any kind of delay, or basically the moment he saw a guy, he'd try to throw it up to him and kind of delegate. What he would do is he would delegate his problems rather than solve them with the puck. So he'd just be like, okay, this is your problem now, take the puck, like without actually, drawing a player in, making a player through them. But at the end of the year, you saw a drastic difference. I watched him a couple times, especially around March, April, and not only was his hockey sense not a weakness, it was probably his biggest strength, which is really interesting to me because it's very rare that you see a player with that steep of a progression in a specific area, especially one as important as hockey sense. But man, there were times where he was blending his elite skill because, skill set wise alone, he's probably top 5, at worst top 10 in the draft.
Yeah.
The hands, the shot, the passing, it's really high end and really clever. But when he paired that with his hockey sense at the end of the year, I mean, he was a different player. So I don't know if a lot of teams just watched a couple game of his early on and were just like, I don't like watching this player, so let's not. And that's what led him to slip, or maybe it's inconsistency or the rawness that scared some guys off. But Quentin Musty is a supremely skilled player, and I'm just completely baffled that he was there at 26. I thought he would be gone way earlier than that, especially as a big kind of, he's got every tool to become a power forward. He just needs to put it all together. He doesn't play the power forward style yet, but he's got every single element you want from a power forward. And teams usually just jump on those guys right away. So I'm just astounded. Yeah.
I mean, 6'2" guy is 200 pounds already, just turned 18 and is like, he can skate, he can shoot, he can do anything. It's crazy. And it feels like the Sharks, we'll talk about some of our overall thoughts, but I mean, it feels like the Sharks laid a foundation here with Quentin Musty and Will Smith. And, I did my top 10 Sharks prospects, and Will Smith's number 1, William Eklund's number 2, and I have Quentin Musty at number 3. And I feel like I feel like that's a pretty safe thing to say right now. I mean, I know they haven't played any, haven't played any NHL games, but you got to feel really confident coming out of this draft at least from the first round. So before we get into second round picks and Cagnoni and some of the other guys, I do need to take a quick break, talk to you guys about our friends over at FanDuel. And It's baseball season right now. And if you are looking to, maybe lay a little wood or get in on the action, you can take your first swing at betting MLB on FanDuel and get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets. That's $200. That's right. Bet $20, you land $200 in bonus bets. Win or lose, that's $200 you can spend on betting everything from the money line to over unders, so who you think is going to hit the first home run. Betting Ohtani to hit a home run, it feels like it's safe money because that dude is just crushing it right now. So you can do this all on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. There's no better place to bet on MLB than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So sign up today. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball. All right, so we feel really good about the foundation. And pick number 36 when they picked Kasper Halttunen, who already signed his ELC. So the Sharks like him if he's already signed his ELC. You talked that he was kind of a specialist player on when you did your Pacific breakdown. What do you mean by that, and why do you think it's a good pick here at 26 or at 36? Sorry,
at 36 it's decent-ish value. I had him in the 40s, but about in the same kind of range as this.
Yeah.
For me, the thing is with Halttunen is I've never seen a player shoot more in a very long time.
The man loves to shoot the puck.
Yeah, he's up there with Matvei Michkov in terms of the shooters in this year, and he's really good at it. I mean, he can wire it. He's got a fantastic shot, and both in terms of power and accuracy and just his ability to find open ice in the slot is just, it's uncanny how good he is at finding that space and working with it and quickly getting a shot off. It's just, for me, outside of that, I don't see much manipulation. I don't see much deception. I don't see much awareness. The playmaking, he's not a playmaker at all. He's more of a, I'd say, a connector. Like he'll make a pass to make a pass. He'll hit his first outlet, but he never holds on to the puck or finds a second or third outlet. That's just not his game. Decent-ish, would pretty much bang on average skater. So what you're getting out of Halttunen is a guy who you're hoping can score some goals, and he absolutely can. I mean, just on volume alone, and usually volume shooters do pan out, especially because the volume doesn't go away.
Yeah,
it's just, for me, is how does he incorporate that volume more efficiently? Because right now he's shooting on reception pretty much every chance he gets, but it's a different ball game to actually take that many shots, but have them all be good shots. So that's kind of the next step for him. And it's weird to say that, a guy who's a specialist as a shooter needs to improve his shooting, but you just bank on your good card. I think that's what Halttunen needs to do. And if he can just be a trigger man on the power play, kind of like Victor Olofsson in Buffalo, just a guy who just plug up there and he just scores you 30 a year from the half wall, then sure. I mean, 30 goals, you'll take that.
The Sharks need more goal scorers in their system anyway. So he's got an interesting decision, right? Or at least him or the Sharks or whoever his agent, because he played last year in Liiga in the Finnish league, right? And it struggled. I would say. I think Sebastian said he was snake bitten. He shot a bunch, wasn't able to score. But the London Knights have his rights, and there's talk of him going to the OHL. If he came to you, said, Hadi, what do you think I should do? What would you do if or what would you suggest? Do you think he sticks in Liiga where, yes, he's playing against men, but maybe he's not getting as much ice time and stuff? Or would you send him to a really good London Ice team that's got a bunch of first-round picks? You got Sam Dickinson's going to be a high pick next year's draft. That team's going to be good. You're probably going to be a top 6 player on that team. What do you think?
I mean, if it's a matter of upping his confidence, it really just depends on what you want to work on with Halttunen, because he's going to work on his shot regardless, just based on how many shots he takes, really. Yes. But I mean, if you send him to London, it's really a confidence thing, because he's going to be playing with a lot of really good playmakers in a league that, we saw it at the World Juniors. He was the only guy on Finland at times. Yep. I mean, he's able to dominate his age group. That's not an issue. So sending him to London, where he's going to be facing about the same age of guys, and even, in terms of quality, they're going to be a lot less. I think that's really just to make sure that you work on his mindset as the top guy on his team, as a top triggerman, as a top scorer on his team. But I think he already has that mindset, just given the propensity he has for shooting. So I think that playing in the Liga and getting comfortable with working that level, and being able to score goals and finding trickier ways in order to get into those pockets at the right times, I think that would be kind of the best plan for Halttunen, just to make sure that he's working at a level where there's a competitive roadblock that's forcing him to adapt, because that's what he needs to do. needs to adapt his game. He needs to mold his game, because if he keeps playing junior, I feel like that's going to stunt his development more than anything. Whereas if he's facing pros who are already giving him more challenges to get to the slot, to get those shots off, he's going to have to find more ways, and that's what you want from him. So I think it's a better idea to send him to Liiga.
Okay. We're going to skip Svoboda. We'll talk about kind of some of the rest of the guys here. But I know Cagnoni, you and Sebastian were both shocked that he made it to the Sharks at 123, and you both love this pick. I love this pick. I mean, I had Cagnoni as a potential pick for the Sharks at 36, and getting him at 123. And I know smaller defenseman, right? But it feels like the smaller defensemen, they either are really good in the NHL and they don't make it at all, or they don't make it at all type of thing. And I have a feeling he might just be really good. So Cagnoni.
Yeah. For me, Luca Cagnoni was easily in the top 5 for defensemen in this draft. I really, really love this player. For me, he's the smartest defenseman in this class. But the thing is, with Cagnoni, you're getting a smaller defender who can't really skate all that well, which there's no market for that in the NHL. So I'm surprised, but also not surprised that he slipped outside of the top 2, top 3 rounds. 123 is very, very good value for me, because if you can work around his intelligence, especially a guy who is going to be facing most scenarios a lot, he's going to be going into board battles a lot more as he grows, and especially as he turns pro. He's a bit of more of a long-term project, but you're banking on smarts, and for me, that's a bet you take every time. I've always said that smarts are very difficult to teach and even more difficult to refine to the point that Cagnoni already has. So you're getting a guy whose smarts are A+, and then the skill set is decent enough. He's got a good shot. He's able to manipulate passing lanes. He's able to break out the puck with a pass. You're just waiting on him to develop his skating, which can definitely come with strength and conditioning and just age overall. And you're banking on him filling out his frame and becoming a bit more physical to compensate for his lack of size. But for me, Cagnoni it's just fantastic value at 123.
I mean, we saw, again, I know it's a prospect scrimmage, but you saw the flashes of his playmaking and his skill and him being able to kind of think and create on the fly there. And again, this is an easy bet to take, right? Because if he pans out, you are getting a good NHL defenseman. And if he doesn't work out, it's a 4th round pick. And you could name me 100 Sharks 4th round picks who just never panned out type of thing. So I absolutely love this. And I think he's going to have a bit of a chip on his shoulder, right? Wasn't drafted in the WHL draft, worked his way up, and I think for him, was projected as a potential 2nd round, went to the 4th. I think there's going to be a little bit of that chip on his shoulder that's just going to continue to drive him to try to be the best possible player he can be.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, Luca Cagnoni was not drafted in the dub, and then within a year and a half became the best defenseman on his team, which isn't out of the question for him at the NHL level either. I mean, the ceiling is sky high. The floor is very low. But there is a scenario, and that's why I had him in my top 20. There is a scenario where Luca Cagnoni becomes a number 2, number 3 defenseman. And if you get that in the 4th round, you're screaming laughing. It's just great value.
It is great value. Before we finish up, we're going to, kind of some of these other guys that you might have a couple notes on. And then we'll some overall thoughts on the draft. Do want to thank you guys for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. Again, proudly part of the Locked On Network. We cover your team every day, or at least right now 3 days a week. If you want to be an everydayer, just make sure you guys are following wherever you get podcasts, or you can watch on YouTube. I don't want to spoil yet, but I have a Hall of Fame caliber guest coming on next. Sorry, Hadi, this guest, it's pretty good. I'll tell you when we're done recording. So, but just make sure you guys are following along wherever you get podcasts, and of course on YouTube. All right, so you got some notes on some of the guys. So Svoboda, I know you watched a little bit of too. So give me Svoboda. I know he very, very, very talented USHL team with the Youngstown Phantoms, was kind of playing that 3rd line defensive role. Potential bottom 6, middle 6 forward in the future.
Yeah, I see the 3rd line is kind of the ceiling for him. He's a very straightforward player, but there are some kind of tantalizing flashes of skill. Sometimes he'll pull off a pass that makes you kind of raise your eyebrows. Sometimes he'll take a shot from distance that'll find a corner, and you're like, oh, maybe you can work on those areas and kind of develop him into a skilled guy. But I mainly see him as a guy who's going to man the net front, who's going to win you some battles, he's going to go on those corners and do the hard work for you, and kind of just make life easy for your top 6 as they hop on over the bench. Just the type of guy who is loved by his teammates and consistently puts in the work. I mean, you're getting that in the third round. It's kind of steep valley for me. I didn't have him ranked, and I watched a lot of the Youngstown Phantoms. They were one of the teams I watched the most. I was kind of surprised to see him gone at 71. It's a bit steep, but I would have taken Cagnoni at 26. So I mean, I'm fine. If you flip them both, we're okay. It's not the end of the world. And maybe Yegor Rimashevskiy could be a decent kind of long-term swing in the 7th round at 203. Great shooter. He's basically got no engagement to him, which is his main flaw. He doesn't really paddle hard and on the forecheck, on the back check, in his own zone. But one thing he can do is he can just fire that puck, and he's able to find pockets of space and make some decent little slip passes or area passes. So I see some flashes of hockey sense, but with Rimashevskiy, you're basically begging him to develop a bit more intensity, a bit more motor, a bit more drive to his game. But if you can get him to do that, he's a great skater, can make some decent passes in tight, and can shoot the lights out, which is just great value in the 7th round. It's a long-term swing. It'll take a long while, but you never know with these guys.
Yeah, I mean, I think McKean's they said you'll never find anybody who cheats the zone as much as him. He's basically just gone already, which I still chuckle about that. So let's get some overall thoughts. So, I mean, I think one thing with Mike Grier, with his last year's draft class was kind of the he had been on the job for like 3 days and was kind of the combo between him and Doug Wilson. This year's draft class, like you can see the Sharks added size. Like all these guys except for Cagnoni are 6 foot or above, and a lot of them are 6'2", 6'3", 6'4". I know the Sharks prospect pool, it's a little bit more on the shorter end with Eklund and Bordelot and Kushin and Robbins and stuff. But I mean, what do you think of kind of trying to blend that speed and skill that it seems like Mike Grier is trying to do right now?
Yeah, for me, I don't really mind as long as you're not overcompensating. Right. Yeah. Like for me, Andrew Cristall was there at 36, probably would have been my guy over Halttunen. That's probably the only pick along with Svoboda where I'm just like, there were other guys that I definitely would have shot for first. But a lot of the guys dropped. We don't know why. I mean, it might just be that they bombed interviews, might just be some off-ice stuff that isn't really known to the public. Yep. Guys like Jaden Perron, who I had ranked high, and other guys like that.
Yes.
Yeah. 94. I mean, obviously the Carolina Hurricanes picked him up, which is kind of good news to me as a scout because I'm doing something right if the Hurricanes like him.
Yes.
But yeah, no, I mean, there were a couple picks where I'm just like, you kind of sacrificed skill in favor of size, but Quentin Musty is just the best of both worlds at 26. I think that's the perfect. Just you're not sacrificing any skill. You're not sacrificing size. He's got both in spades. So that's the pick that fits. Will Smith is average size. Doesn't play the most physically, but can definitely fend off players. And yeah, Halttunen is just the epitome of a big guy who can score. So there are some picks in there that I'm kind of like, there was value there that they could have taken instead. But at the end of the day, Halttunen isn't awful value at 36. It's just given who was there. Brandon Svoboda, like I said, 71's a bit high, but weren't many guys that I would be screaming for at that range. So it's not too bad. And if those picks let you take Luca Cagnoni at 123 and take that big swing on skill versus size, then sure, it's just a matter of hitting that sweet spot and not just basically doing an Arizona Hurricanes and picking exclusively 6'2" plus players. No matter what. I mean, I feel like the Coyotes basically sorted by size, and that's how they had the rankings. It was pretty weird. But yeah, they're kind of in a whole different world. But for me, as long as you let those big picks let you swing on smaller guys that are more skilled, I'm okay with it.
Yeah, and I think there was, or at least my thought is, especially with 71, is it seemed like maybe they're trying to trade up for a goalie, and then you had that huge run on goalies kind of like in the 50s, 60s, and I think they kind of missed out on that potential right there. And especially because it felt like there was, at least I was hoping, like, okay, there might be a goalie that drops to you that you can kind of trade up for. And I knew Mike Grier said, we're going to try to draft a goalie. They unfortunately didn't draft a goalie. And I mean, I think this year's goalie, there's some good players, but there's no one where you're like, okay, that's my future goaltender, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, there were a couple that were available. I think Trey Augustine went to the pick right before Kasper Halttunen, and I would not have been surprised at all to see San Jose pick up Trey Augustine, or Adam Gajan went right before as well. There were a couple goalies that went right before their picks. Jacob Fowler was picked at 69, who's also from Youngstown.
Yep.
So they could have swung on him at 71 if he was available. But like you said, I mean, you're not going to trade up for those guys necessarily because they're not kind of make or break value. You can find a goalie next year, the year after, in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round. Goalies are kind of a crapshoot. You can just pick them up anywhere and they can become elite NHLers.
Yes.
I mean, other than, Marc-Andre Fleury, Carey Price, Andre Vasilevsky, I mean, there aren't a lot of high-end goaltenders that are picked in the 1st round.
Yeah, I mean, you are starting to. It does seem like it started to come around a little bit though, with like, Vollander, who's picked in the 20s by the Wild and looks like he's going to be an absolute stud. Askarov, who looks good, even though the rumors of Nashville putting him out there potential is a little weird. But yeah, I wonder if our goalies are we going to make goalies great again, Hadi? So we'll see. So overall, though, I mean, I think as Sharks fans, you went through a terrible season. You got to be at least feeling good about like, okay, we can kind of see Mike Grier's vision of that competitive skill with Musty, with Smith, Cagnoni as I think a really good gamble to make at the 4th round. I'm gonna be tough on you. Give me a grade. I know it's impossible to grade him right now, but yeah.
It's a good B+ for me. I mean, the Quentin Musty pick is an A+ already. The Luca Cagnoni pick is an A+. I'd say the Will Smith pick is a B+. The Kasper Halttunen pick is probably a C+. Svoboda's down at maybe a C- D+. And then, a couple guys after that. I haven't scouted Axel Landon. I've scouted a very, very little of David Klee and Eric Polkamp.
Yeah.
But Yegor Rimashevskiy I watched a lot of. For me, that's a decent B pick. So overall, yeah, B+ makes good sense for the Sharks, and they barely made the cut on our winners and losers episode from Friday. They were one of our honorable mentions for the winners from the draft. So it's just hard to beat Carolina with their draft picks every year. They're just ridiculous.
Can't keep getting away with it.
They really can't. It's horrible.
It's not fair. They keep getting away. It's like, oh, you're good and you draft really well with amazing player. It doesn't seem fair.
Absurd. Yeah,
it's absurd. It is absurd. So, Hadi, thank you so much. Where can the people find you?
Of course, so the one-stop shop is HadiK_scouting on Twitter. You find everything I post there, everything that's podcast episodes, articles, just overall rankings, all that stuff. Getting ready for the 2024 draft already, so getting some viewings in. Probably will be a bit of a while before I put some rankings out, just because I like to be a lot more comfortable with prospects. I usually put out my first rankings around end of September, start of October. And either way, there won't be a lot of hockey in the meantime, just basically some MHL tape. So I can scout rushing players all you want, but I want to scout the rest of the hockey world. So yeah, no, one-stop shop's HadiK_scouting. Everything I post goes there. Otherwise, a podcast, you can find it at LO_NHL Prospects on Twitter, or anywhere you find this podcast. Just look up Locked On NHL Prospects and you'll find it.
All right. And of course, you can find Locked On Sharks wherever you get podcasts. You can also watch on YouTube as well. You can find the show on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and Threads at Locked On Sharks. You can find me on Twitter and Threads at My Fry Hole. Until Wednesday, bye, friends.